The NFL trade deadline has come and gone, and unfortunately, trade deadline day wasn't as exciting as we all anticipated. A lot of chalk deals, really, that we all kind of foresaw coming, whether that be Devontae Adams to the Jets, whether that be Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders. A lot of deals that we anticipated, and some of the names that were thrown out there didn't ultimately end up getting moved. So it kind of left us with what I would argue is one of the worst trade deadlines I've seen in the last few years. Really no activity whatsoever. But we are going to talk about the five biggest winners and the five biggest losers of the deadline. Stay tuned. We will be having a 3-round mock draft coming up right after this. So stay tuned for that one. That one should be up in a few hours. But let's go ahead and kick this off. Don't want to waste any more of your time with the biggest winner, I think. And I think it's the Washington Commanders landing Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore is a corner that I do think is starting to regress a little bit. He's allowed eight receptions on his 14 targets. He has dealt with injuries his entire career, been in and out of the lineup for the Saints. He is an older corner, so, I mean, the expectation shouldn't be for him to still be this elite all-pro level guy that he once was. But for Washington, this is such an incredible addition for them. Not because I think Lattimore is, like I said, I don't think he's this all-pro, but the biggest issue with Washington has been their pass defense. They have really struggled. A lot of teams have really been able to pick their defense apart. And now you go out and get a veteran corner who, even though he's not at the peak of his powers, he is still by far the best option that this team has. He still has size. He's still really good in press coverage. And for a Dan Quinn scheme that loves these big physical press type of corners, that's what you're getting in Marshawn Lattimore. It's a huge pickup for them. And now you can kind of see what they can get. Can Benjamin St-Juste get better as the number 2? Emmanuel Forbes, they were able to retain at the deadline. Do you move him into the slot? Like, there's some different options here. The Commanders came in at number 5 on my power rankings last night. And I do think this move was one that I was anticipating. I thought that this was going to be happening. A lot of people were talking about the Chiefs. I didn't think that made a lot of sense. But for what Washington needed, the price they paid, sent a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick. They receive a 5th-rounder back as well. I think it was a good price to pay for a team that has a legitimate chance to contend in the NFC this year. Another loser for me is the Dallas Cowboys, sticking in the NFC East. Dallas did really nothing at the deadline. A lot of people were talking about, could they be potential players for Travis Etienne from Jacksonville, which was a move that I thought made a ton of sense. They need running back help. Etienne has really struggled at times for Jacksonville, kind of been demoted down to the RB2, but the potential is still there for Trevor Etienne to be a good football player, or Travis Etienne. And they didn't really tap into that. They decided, you know what, we're going to stay put and we're going to go out and get a receiver. And it's Jonathan Mingo. Now, if you guys go back a couple of years ago, Jonathan Mingo was a player that I thought was heavily being overhyped entering the pre-draft process. A lot of people really loved the athletic testing. Those numbers didn't show up on the tape. Carolina took him at the top pick in the 2nd round back in the 2022 draft. So he's in year 2 now. Carolina's already traded him. And when you look at Carolina, they just traded Deontay Johnson, so they kind of need a receiver spot. They cut Terrace Marshall, and he wasn't good enough to get a spot on that roster. So that's already the big red flag. They give up a 4th-round pick, and that's the big issue. People are like, well, they were probably going to take a wide receiver in the 4th round anyways, who might have a better chance of being successful than Jonathan Mingo. I think Mingo has been pretty horrible for Carolina. Again, a team that has been in need of wide receiver help. He has 12 receptions on the year. And for Dallas, what does this get you? People are going to say, well, Carolina's a dysfunctional franchise. Dallas is not looking too much better right now either. I think this is a horrible pickup, a massive overpay for the Cowboys. I think they are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. Another winner for me are the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, it is the DeAndre Hopkins pickup primarily. Gave up a conditional 5th-round pick to get a receiver that is already making an impact. He's played 2 games for them at this point. And, man, the Chiefs were in desperate need of a receiver. After Rashee Rice goes down earlier in the season, this receiving room was looking thin, to say the least. They picked up Juju Smith-Schuster. You're asking a lot of the rookie Xavier Worthy. Sky Moore has been a basic non-factor throughout his entire career up to this point. And they go out and they trade for DeAndre Hopkins, which, again, wasn't a move that really shocked me. But Hopkins is still an incredibly talented receiver. The hands have been on full display. He still has the ability to make guys miss. And against press coverage, he is one of the best players in all of football. He's got the size to win those 50-50 balls. He's a good route runner. He does it all. And for a Chiefs team that needed wide receiver help, this move made all the sense in the world. But it wasn't just the DeAndre Hopkins move that I liked from Kansas City. I actually really liked the Josh Uche pickup, maybe even more than Hopkins. Not because they needed another edge rusher. I think George Karlaftis has been solid. You haven't really gotten to see what you've gotten Felix Anudike-Uzomah. But as a third or fourth edge rusher, Josh Uche for a 7th-round pick was an absolute steal. He has been a reliable pass rusher throughout his career in New England. He's had some big years, some big numbers throughout his career. And for a Chiefs team that is already elite defensively, going out and getting a guy like Josh Uche, I thought was a really good pickup. The Chiefs remain in the top of the league, still haven't lost up to this point, and they had 2 players who I think could be key contributors for them come playoff time. Another loser for me is the Las Vegas Raiders, and there's a lot of different angles you could take with why I think the Raiders are a big loser of the weekend. Number one, it's the receiving room. They kind of committed to tanking when they traded Devontae Adams, which I agreed with that move. But it seemed like Jacoby Myers had a pretty interesting market. I would have entertained those offers. I think a team like the Niners, the Chargers, there were some teams, even the Cowboys, I would have given up a 4th-round pick for Jacoby Myers. I thought they could have made a move there that would have made a lot of sense for them and could have made this Raiders team better in the long run, but they didn't. On top of that, I didn't think the Devontae Adams price was great. I thought they kind of sold for pennies on the dollar. Granted, that is what happens when a player requests a trade. You don't really get to maximize their value. But what I will say about this Raiders team, I think, and we'll talk about another team here in a little bit, this is a team that is clearly going in the wrong direction. No quarterback identity. They've made some moves on the offensive side of the football that could help, but they're severely under-talented roster. And this is a team that I thought should have committed to tanking this season. Whether that be trading Max Crosby or whatever it may be, I thought they should have looked to go get extra assets for the draft, and they didn't exactly do that. Max Crosby's kind of stuck in Vegas right now in a situation where he's the highest paid player. This team is not winning very many games. I think you could have gotten an opportunity there to kind of sell high on some of your players, and they didn't do it, and for that reason, they're a loser for me. Another winner, it's the Baltimore Ravens. I think I like the Deontay Johnson pickup better than I like any of the other receiving moves outside of Amari Cooper. Deontay Johnson fits exactly what this Baltimore team was in need of. They needed some more speed and route running on the outside. You've got Bateman, who can take the top off the defense, but he just hasn't been reliable. And when you talk about best route runners in the NFL, Cooper Kupp is usually the guy that's at the top of the list. And Deontay Johnson is number 2, I would say. One of the best separators in all of football, who now you get to pair up with Lamar Jackson as a key contributor for a really good offense. Deontay Johnson, he showed some flashes in Carolina. That passing offense didn't really ask him to do a whole lot. But when he was on the field, I thought you saw real signs of improvement. And now he's on a Baltimore team where I think they're not going to ask as much as Carolina did. They're not going to ask as much as Pittsburgh did because of how much they run the ball. But when they need a play, Deontay Johnson gives you a reliable target for Lamar Jackson. And I also really like the Tre'Davious White pickup. He's having a really bad season on paper. I get it. He's not having a great year. But for the Ravens, they've dealt with some injuries in the secondary. They've been banged up. You gave up a 7th-round pick to get a guy that I'm not ready to write off yet. So I thought they had a really good deadline, a team that was trying to buy at the deadline, trying to make a move to get into contention status or furthermore prove that they can win a Super Bowl this year. I think the 2 moves they made definitely show that this team has a legit chance of winning it all. Another loser for me, we kind of talked about it with the Dallas Cowboys. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's a damn shame that Christian Kirk got injured. Because I think Christian Kirk could have warranted you back a 3rd-round pick. He is one of the better route runners, one of the better slot weapons in all of football. He has an injury. He goes out. They weren't able to really find a market for Gabe Davis. I don't know how you would. I don't really see. I hated that signing when it happened, and I stand by that. They traded Cam Robinson for a package that I thought was way less than what they could have gotten back in a return, and they weren't able to trade Travis Etienne. So a Jags team that is 2-7 right now, severely underperforming based on the preseason expectations. They haven't really been able to run the ball other than with Tank Bigsby. And Travis Etienne, I think, had a market out there. I think you could have gotten a 4th, 5th round pick for a guy that still on his rookie contract, still has speed, hasn't really been a contributor. The injuries limit their options in terms of what type of moves they can make. And I think that really hurts. So Jacksonville, to me, is a big loser of the weekend because this is a team that I thought should have sold more than they did, and they did not. So I've got them as another loser of the week. Another winner for me are the Detroit Lions. I mean, everyone's talking about Zadarius Smith, and I think that and the Marshawn Lattimore move are the two big noteworthy moves that we got today. And I love it for the Detroit Lions. They needed another pass rusher. The defensive line has been solid without Aiden Hutchinson in there. You've gotten really good play from Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader. They're stopping the run, but they don't have that legit pass rush presence without Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson was putting up unbelievable NFL record-breaking numbers before he got hurt. Ends up dealing with the injury, and we won't see him again for the rest of the year. But Zadarius Smith is having a good season in his own right, and I don't really think a lot of people are talking about it. 5 sacks on the season thus far. He's on a good contract. He's still got the size, the bend. Yes, he's a player that is notorious for taking plays off, not giving it 100%. But for the Lions, I think this is a perfect situation for him. Dan Campbell does one thing exceptionally well. He gets people to buy into the culture. I think he can do it with Zadarius Smith. And the NFL Countdown crew made a really good point. This does kind of feel like when the Rams went out and got Von Miller a couple of years ago. And it's like, yeah, we're making that Super Bowl push. Aiden Hutchinson supposedly could come back by the playoffs. I highly doubt that happens. With or without Aiden Hutchinson, though, I thought a number 2 edge rusher was the biggest need for Cleveland, and they did go out and make that move. I think it was a great one. I've got the Lions as a big winner of the weekend. Another loser for me were the Los Angeles Chargers. I just wanted to see them get a receiver. A lot of people talked about Adam Thielen. Some people talked about Darius Slayton. I thought you needed to make a move in this receiving room because the Chargers are exceeding expectations right now. Their offense looks really good. Justin Herbert is dealing the football, and they just didn't really do anything at the deadline. They didn't trade anybody, didn't make any moves. I thought this was a team that made a lot of sense to be a buyer at the deadline. You've got a talented quarterback, a run game that's thriving. You've got a good coach. Darius Slayton would have been perfect for this team as kind of that deep ball / like physical threat. You don't have that in Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston. I thought you could have gotten that from him. Adam Thielen would have been even better. You could have brought Mike Williams back for a 7th round pick. I thought there were moves that the Chargers could have and probably should have made that unfortunately they did not. And that's why they come in as a loser. It doesn't really change my outlook on them as a team, but I would have liked to see them make a move. The last winner we're going to highlight here are the Buffalo Bills. I talked about it. I think the Amari Cooper trade was the best trade of the deadline for a Bills team that I think might win the AFC. That I think the more I look at this team week in, week out, this Bills team feels a little bit different than they have in years prior. They just find ways to win games that they would usually lose. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level right now, and you've got a good run game. Amari Cooper, excellent route runner, excellent separator, and he complements what you have in this receiving room perfectly because you got Keon Coleman, who is that physical jump ball type, throw him post fades and see what he can do. That's his game, and he's excellent at that. He's really been improving. You've got Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid as glorified slot weapons, and then Amari Cooper now could just be that go-to reliable weapon. He's going to get open across the middle of the field. And I love that. He's already been making plays early on in the season for Buffalo. I think that was the best move that any team made at the deadline. I absolutely love Amari Cooper to Buffalo. And the last loser to me, it is the Carolina Panthers. It isn't really anything that they did. I thought the Deontay Johnson trade was solid. I like actually trading Jonathan Mingo for a fourth. I thought they could have sold a little bit more. Jadeveon Clowney, a lot of teams were looking for a pass rusher. Send him to Atlanta, sent him to Baltimore again. Could have gotten, I think, a day 2 pick back for that. I think it could have gotten a 4th or 5th round pick back for Adam Thielen. I would have entertained offers on JC Horn. This would have been a team that I would have been like all in on just selling, trying to get as many chips as I possibly can. But they kind of stayed put. And I am happy that they didn't trade Bryce Young. I thought that was a guy that you had to keep. He's looked really solid the last couple of weeks. They kind of shut down offers. A couple of other trades that we didn't really talk about. Baron Browning to Arizona was one of my favorite moves of the week. Gives them an extra pass rusher. I really love Khalil Herbert to the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been talking about him as a potential trade candidate. He fell to RB3 in Chicago. I think he's RB1 in Cincinnati now. I think he's got some juice, and he's going to be a real impactful player for them. And then, obviously, the 2 Steelers moves. I didn't understand the Preston Smith pickup. I thought that one was a pretty – I just didn't understand it. For the Mike Williams pickup, I liked it. I thought they overpaid, though. I thought a 5th rounder was way too much for a guy that has dealt with injuries and hasn't really been that impactful when he's been on the field for the Jets. But those are my winners and losers of the deadline. Let me know what you felt like your team did well. Do you wish they would have traded somebody else? What do you guys think down in the comment section below? Leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.